3 women asked me not to make this video. One was a close friend. She said, "You're revealing too much. It's not fair." Another was my sister. She looked me straight in the eye and said, "Some things men just shouldn't know." And the third, a woman I used to date. She didn't even try to hide it. If you say these things out loud, men will start waking up. But that's exactly why I'm making this video. Because too many men are walking through life confused, misreading signals, doubting their worth, constantly adjusting themselves just to be enough for women who are quietly testing them at every turn. You've felt it, haven't you? You say the right things. You show up. You care. But somehow, you still end up ignored, sidelined, or strung along. And no one explains why. That ends today. Because this video isn't about hating women. It's not about manipulation or playing games. It's about finally understanding the psychological battlefield that most men have been walking into blind. You see, there are truths about female psychology, ancient, deeply embedded patterns that most men sense intuitively, but never dare to articulate. Not because they're weak, but because the world has conditioned them to stay nice, to be safe, to not rock the boat. But niceness doesn't protect you from manipulation. Obedience doesn't earn you respect, and silence won't save you from being tested. That's why this isn't just another dating tips video. This is about seeing, truly seeing, the 5 strategic psychological tactics women use, consciously or unconsciously, to assess, influence, and yes, sometimes control the men around them. And more importantly, it's about learning how to rise above all of it, with the clarity, calm, and unshakable strength of a man who refuses to be played. Because a Stoic man doesn't flinch, he doesn't chase, and he damn sure doesn't fold under pressure. This isn't a dating trick. This is how you become the man who cannot be tested the wrong way. Let's begin. 1. Strategic silence. When saying nothing is saying everything, you text her. Not a love confession, not anything heavy, just a simple message. Something real, a doorway to connection. She reads it. You see the scene indicator. And then, nothing. No anger, no distance, just silence. A few minutes pass, then hours. You check your phone. Still nothing. And in that silence, you begin to spiral. You overanalyze. You start questioning yourself. Did I say something wrong? Is she losing interest? Should I follow up again? What you don't realize is, that moment isn't random. It's a move. And in most cases, it's a test. A woman doesn't need to raise her voice to create pressure. She only needs to go quiet. At the right time. Because for most men, silence feels like emptiness. But for a woman, silence is a mirror. It reflects your level of emotional control. And most men, unfortunately, reveal their hand immediately. Silence isn't rejection. It's observation. It's strategy. Women learn early that silence timed well is more powerful than any statement. A well-placed pause makes others lean in harder. It forces the other person to reveal themselves. When she stops replying, pulls back emotionally, or suddenly goes quiet, she's not necessarily gone. She's stepping back to see what you'll do next. Will you chase? Will you panic? Will you lose composure because she withdrew her attention? That's what she's watching for. The moment a man feels unsteady because of a woman's silence, it's not love, it's emotional dependence. He hasn't yet learned how to stay grounded without a response. He relies on her engagement to feel secure. And women, consciously or not, pick up on that faster than you think. A woman's silence isn't a lack of interest. It's a mechanism to expose what's underneath your calm surface. Many men respond by texting more, calling, explaining, trying everything to win her back. They think they're being kind, but in truth, they're revealing their fear of abandonment. Others shut down completely, go cold, act like they don't care. But that's not strength either. That's ego defense, a mask to hide their internal collapse. Both are reactions, and both fail the test. The Stoic man doesn't respond like that. He doesn't rush to clarify. He doesn't try to fix the moment. He doesn't beg for attention. Because he understands, silence is not a threat. It's space, and in that space, he remains. He doesn't rush to fill the gap. He allows it to be. And through his stillness, he sends a quiet signal of power. I am not moved by presence or absence. That silence, rather than destabilizing him, becomes the perfect arena to reveal his groundedness. While others spiral, he stays composed. While others seek answers, he listens, not to her, but to himself. So the next time a woman slips into silence, don't see it as a void you need to fill. See it as a mirror being held up to you. Can you tolerate not knowing without reaching for control? Can you stay balanced without being reassured? That's where your true strength is tested. The weak man reacts. The strong man holds the line. But the Stoic man? He doesn't need to speak. His presence says everything. Because in the end, silence is not rejection. It's a door. And only the man who is calm, clear, and unwavering walks through it without losing himself. 2. Emotional mirroring, when she becomes who you are. You feel like she gets you. She laughs when you laugh. She softens when you go quiet. She matches your energy so perfectly it feels effortless, like she was made to understand you. And in that moment, you let your guard down. Not because she asked you to, but because you believed the connection was real. What you didn't realize is this: she wasn't showing you who she is. She was showing you who you are. This is emotional mirroring, one of the most powerful invisible dynamics in female psychology. And it's the reason why many men fall fast, trust too soon, and expose their inner world long before they should. Women don't always use this intentionally. It's rarely scripted. It doesn't need to be. Because emotional mirroring is something most women develop naturally, a byproduct of their social intelligence. From a young age, they learn how to adjust, how to read a room, how to match tone, energy, and emotion. Not to manipulate, but to influence, to connect, to test. That's what most men miss. It's not about being fake, it's about being fluid. She becomes who you are, not because she has no identity, but because she's gathering information. Information about what draws you in, what excites you, what makes you feel safe, what type of energy you reward, and what you chase. You see it all the time, but you don't realize it. She's lighthearted and playful when you're bold. She turns nurturing when you show vulnerability. She becomes distant the moment you get too comfortable. Not random, not emotional chaos, just a series of adjustments, testing your calibration, reading your internal structure, mapping out how much power she has over your state. And here's where most men get it wrong. Because it feels good to be mirrored. It feels like connection, like chemistry, like she finally sees you. And in that false sense of recognition, most men start opening the gates. They reveal past wounds. They confess desire. They abandon composure in favor of emotional relief, mistaking her reflection for authenticity. But reflection isn't depth, alignment isn't truth, and rapport isn't trust. What you're experiencing isn't a mirror of her soul. It's a mirror of yours. This is why so many men are shocked when the energy changes. One week she's fully engaged, fully attuned to your rhythm, and the next, she's cold, detached, like someone flipped a switch. But she didn't change. You just stopped leading the emotional frequency. You stepped back, and she followed. Because that's the truth of emotional mirroring. She becomes who you are, until you stop being. And when that happens, she doesn't hold the frame. She watches it fall. If you lack structure, she adapts, temporarily. But if your structure collapses, She disconnects, not because she's cruel, but because your identity was never solid enough to stand on its own. You became available too quickly. You trusted too easily. You mistook emotional feedback for commitment, and you paid the price. This is why the Stoic man sees through it. He doesn't chase the comfort of emotional resonance. He questions it, not out of paranoia, but precision. When she mirrors his energy, he notices. When her tone shifts to match his, he watches. When she becomes his reflection, he doesn't get flattered. He gets focused. He understands the rules of this unspoken language. If she's adjusting to your rhythm, it means you're leading. If she's always shifting to meet your mood, she's collecting data. And if you drop your guard because she feels aligned, you've already lost the frame. A man who's rooted doesn't get pulled by emotional matching. He doesn't confuse emotional intelligence with emotional intimacy. He doesn't trust quickly just because she seems to understand him. Because what she's really doing is seeing how you react to feeling seen. Do you stay grounded when someone reflects your energy? Or do you lean forward, open up, and start revealing parts of yourself she hasn't earned? She's not trying to hurt you. She's trying to read you. But once you've exposed everything without restraint, there's no tension left, no mystery, no edge. She's mapped you out, and that's when her interest starts to fade. So what do? You remain still. You hold your pace, your posture, your presence. You don't shift based on how she behaves. You don't get softer just because she does. You lead with emotional clarity, not emotional codependence. You slow down what you reveal, not out of fear, but out of discipline. Because intimacy isn't created through fast connection. It's earned through consistency. You speak with action, not oversharing. You let her adjust, but you don't follow her rhythm. You observe, but never get lost in her echo. Because the man she mirrors might spark her interest, but the man who stands unmoved by reflection commands her respect. That's what she's really looking for. Not someone who feels good in the moment, but someone whose presence is stable enough to hold his identity when everyone else is adjusting. Be that man. And when she tests by becoming who you are, make sure who you are is worth mirroring. 3. The invisible ranking system. She may never admit it. She may even deny it if you ask. But deep down, she ranks you, just like she ranks every man in her life. Not on paper, not in conversation, but in her behavior, in her priorities, in the subtle choices she makes without a second thought. And the truth is, where you stand in her internal ranking system determines everything. From how fast she texts back, to whether she introduces you to her friends, to whether she's truly invested or simply entertained. Every man she knows is placed somewhere, and that placement isn't fixed. It shifts, moment by moment, interaction by interaction. One moment you might be Tier 1, the next drop to Tier 3 just because you said too much or tolerated too little. It's not fair, it's not always rational, but it's real. And if you don't recognize the system, you'll start mistaking disrespect for confusion and being sidelined for bad timing. So let's call it what it is. At the top are the men she respects and desires, not just physically, but energetically. These are men she listens to, men she adjusts for, men she doesn't make excuses with. When he speaks, she slows down. When he walks away, she feels the distance. He doesn't ask for her attention. It's already there. These men are rare, not because they're perfect, but because they don't audition. They don't try to be chosen. They live by their standard, and she either rises to meet it or watches him disappear. Then there are the men she keeps around for a reason, but not for intimacy. They're fun, helpful, sometimes charming, but they're not the men she deeply respects. She likes them, sure, but when it comes to investing real energy, they're on the bench. They serve a purpose, but they're replaceable. Below that are the men she tolerates, the ones who show up but don't shift anything. She'll reply to their texts, eventually. She might even hang out, if she has nothing better to do. But there's no urgency, no spark, no emotional pull. These men exist in her life, but not in her thoughts. They're background noise. And finally, there's the group she actively avoids, not out of hate, but irrelevance. Men who've crossed lines, men who've clung too long, men who've shown weakness she couldn't unsee. These are the ones she quietly erases, blocks, or forgets, without warning or guilt. Here's what most men miss. You're not placed in one tier and left there forever. Your position is fluid, and it's affected by everything you say, tolerate, or pursue. Every moment you compromise your self-respect, you drop. Every time you overinvest without reciprocity, you drop. Every time you ignore disrespect and keep showing up, you drop. You don't always get notified when it happens, but the signs are always there. Delayed replies, sudden unavailability, cancellations without effort to reschedule, no introductions to her circle, vague language, excuses instead of honesty. All of them say the same thing. You've slipped, and she's no longer trying to hide it. And yet, most men keep pushing. They think if they just try harder, stay more patient, prove their worth more visibly, that somehow she'll see them differently. But what they don't understand is this. The moment you start trying to earn your way up her ranking, you've already admitted you don't belong at the top. Because men at the top don't ask for respect. They command it by how they carry themselves. The Stoic man doesn't fight for a position in anyone's mind. He pays attention to actions, not assumptions. He doesn't cling to potential. He watches behavior. And the second he notices he's being ranked below his worth, he walks, quietly, calmly, without explanation. Not out of ego, but out of clarity. Because he knows, chasing a place in someone's system means abandoning his own. He's not here to impress. He's not here to prove. He's here to live by a code. And whoever doesn't align, doesn't stay. And something strange happens when he does that. The moment he stops caring where he stands, others start standing differently around him. Because people sense when a man refuses to be ranked. They feel the presence of someone who doesn't audition, and suddenly, the very people who once overlooked him start wondering why he no longer needs them. You don't gain power by forcing your value into someone's life. You gain power by making sure your life is structured in a way that doesn't depend on someone else's approval. So when you feel yourself slipping, when the vibe shifts, when her effort fades, when her attention gets cold, don't argue, don't prove, don't beg. Step back, reclaim the frame. Because in the end, a man who lives by principle doesn't ask to be chosen. He chooses where he stays, who gets access, and how much of himself he gives. The moment you stop letting others rank you is the moment they start respecting your presence. 4. Sexual gatekeeping, the psychology of access and control. She's attracted to you. You can feel it. The eye contact lingers. Her body language opens. Her energy shifts when you enter the room. And yet, she holds back. Not obviously, not coldly, but just enough to make you question. Just enough to leave you in that space between invitation and rejection. This isn't confusion. It's design. Because what most men don't realize is this: female sexuality is guarded, not just by choice, but by culture. And that gate isn't just physical, it's psychological. From a young age, women are taught that their sexual value is leverage, that it must be managed, protected, controlled, not because they lack desire, but because they're told their worth depends on how much they withhold. This programming runs deep, even in confident, self-aware women, even when attraction is genuine. So when a woman is interested but still makes you wait, still tests, still plays hard to get, it's not always about you. It's about a system she's learned to survive in. And the more attractive the man, the more she tightens the gate, not to punish him, but to maintain power. Because here's the uncomfortable truth. In most romantic dynamics, the man brings pursuit, the woman brings access, and access to her is currency. It's not just sex, it's reputation, it's security, it's image, it's control. If she gives too easily, she risks being judged. If she gives too late, she risks losing him. So she walks the line, testing, measuring, reading his reactions, not just to see if he wants her, but to see how much. She'll delay intimacy, not because she's unsure, but to see if you'll earn it. She'll create barriers, not because there's no chemistry, but because chemistry without control feels unsafe. And if you mistake those barriers for disinterest, you'll either chase harder or give up too soon. Both play into the system, because now she has the frame. She controls the pace. She decides when and how you get access. And with that power, she filters out the men who want the woman, but not the responsibility. But there's a deeper game happening. Sexual gatekeeping isn't just about timing, it's about identity. She wants to know, are you patient because you're disciplined, or because you're desperate? Do you want her, or do you need her to validate your worth? Will you collapse the moment she teases intimacy, then withdraws? She'll push and pull. She'll escalate, then retreat. She'll ignite desire, then test how you hold it. And your response determines everything, because most men are reactive. They interpret any resistance as rejection, or worse, they try to bargain. They get frustrated, over-compliment, over-explain. They try to earn her approval through compliance. But what they don't understand is this. Once you start negotiating for access, you've already given up your power. The Stoic man doesn't play that game. He doesn't chase intimacy. He doesn't beg for validation. He doesn't interpret gatekeeping as a personal slight. He sees it for what it is, a filter, a test, a measure of his self-control. He wants her, but he never needs her. And that difference changes everything. Because when a woman senses that you're unshaken by her pacing, that your desire is strong but your discipline is stronger, she starts to shift. Now she's not in control because you surrendered. She's in control because you allowed space, without losing posture. You didn't push. You didn't retreat. You held your ground. And that, more than anything, builds respect. Because in a world full of men trying to bypass the gate, there's something powerful about the man who won't chase the key. He knows that true intimacy isn't something to be earned through tricks. It's something exchanged between equals, when trust, respect, and polarity are aligned. So, when she withholds, he doesn't punish. When she tests, he doesn't react. When she delays, he doesn't doubt himself. He observes, he remains, and he lets the gate speak for her, while his presence speaks for him. Because the moment you try to prove yourself for access, you've already proven you don't belong inside. Let her gatekeep. Let her measure. Let her test. You don't force the door open. You become the man she can't close it on. And if she never opens it, you walk, not wounded, but whole. Because the Stoic man never defines his value by how much access he's given. He defines it by how little he needs to ask. 5. The manipulation of male competition. How she uses rivalry to control the frame. You're talking to her. The energy is good. She's smiling, engaged, attentive. Then, casually, she drops a name. Another man. Maybe a co-worker. Maybe an old friend. Maybe just someone who won't stop texting. And just like that, your mind starts spinning. You feel the shift, the tension, the instinct to compare. This wasn't by accident, because whether she realizes it or not, she's just played one of the most effective psychological cards women ever hold: activating male competition. Most men are deeply wired to compete, not just for resources, not just for status, but for the attention and validation of women. And women know this, not intellectually, instinctively. They've seen how one mention of another man changes the dynamic, how quickly men posture, how silence turns to pursuit, how indifference turns to investment. That's the game, and if you don't recognize it, you'll play it without knowing. You'll suddenly feel the urge to prove yourself, to show her you're better than him, to stand out, to win. But here's the truth most men miss. The moment you compete for her, you've already lost the frame. Because now, she's no longer choosing you based on your presence. She's watching you fight for her, while she sits back and observes. You've entered a mental arena you didn't sign up for, and she's the only one keeping score. This isn't about evil manipulation. It's about leverage. And attention, especially male attention, is leverage. By keeping multiple men orbiting, she raises her value without lifting a finger. By keeping you aware of other contenders, she creates urgency. By creating uncertainty, she makes you question your place. And once you start playing from that space, you're no longer acting from strength. You're reacting from insecurity. You text faster. You try harder. You say more than you should. You overinvest, not because it's earned, but because you're afraid of losing. And now she's not choosing you. She's managing you. The Stoic man doesn't enter this game. He doesn't compete for what isn't clearly his. He doesn't prove himself in a contest he didn't agree to. If a woman brings up other men to stir him, he doesn't flinch. He doesn't get jealous. He doesn't chase harder. He steps back, not in punishment, in clarity. Because the moment a woman needs to test his value by comparing him to others, she's already unsure. And the Stoic man doesn't beg to be convinced he's worthy. He knows who he is, with or without her recognition. He also understands this. A woman who constantly needs to spark male rivalry isn't looking for partnership. She's looking for power. And power built on confusion is not respect. It's control. Let her drop the names. Let her mention the guy who won't stop messaging. Let her accidentally bring up her options. You don't take the bait. You don't attack the other man. You don't try to outshine anyone. You rise above the frame entirely. And in doing so, you force her to make a choice. Drop the game. Or lose the man who doesn't play. That's the paradox. The man who refuses to compete becomes the only one worth chasing. Because the moment she realizes you won't fight for her attention, she has to decide if she's willing to lose your presence. And that's when everything changes. Not because you played harder, but because you walked away cleaner. A man who doesn't compete for a woman's validation isn't cold. He's clear. And clarity, in a world obsessed with reaction, is power. Now you've seen the truth. Behind her silence, a test. Beneath the sweet sense of connection, a mirrored strategy. Inside the delayed intimacy, a system of control taught early and reinforced often. And across seemingly casual interactions, a silent ranking board where men are classified without knowing. But this isn't a reason to hate women. It's not fuel for bitterness, anger, or ego-driven rebellion. It's a call to wake up. Because understanding these dynamics doesn't make you cynical. It makes you sharp. It doesn't make you hostile. It makes you aware. And in a world that keeps testing your masculinity at every turn, awareness is everything. The Stoic man doesn't live to be accepted. He lives to stay rooted in his values, no matter who enters, who leaves, who chooses, or who walks away. He doesn't rage when tested. He observes, then withdraws if necessary, quietly, without resentment, He doesn't scramble to prove his worth, because he is the proof, through presence, through posture, through unshakable self-command. And, make no mistake, the world will continue to test you. Women will continue to use subtle strategies, sometimes consciously, often unconsciously, to measure your emotional strength. You have two choices. First, react like the masses. Chase validation. Get caught in the loop of over-explaining, competing, comparing. Trade your dignity for a flicker of attention. Or second, walk like a Stoic, calm, unmoved, with clarity strong enough to walk away from anywhere you're not respected. Not every woman plays games, but you must be grounded enough never to become someone's pawn. And if what you've learned in this series didn't just provoke you, but woke something up in you, then welcome. You've stepped onto the rarest path, the path of the man who cannot be shaken. Subscribe to the unshakable Stoic path right now. Not for trends, not for noise, but because in a world of chaos, this is where men come to reclaim clarity, self-respect, and the strength to never negotiate who they are.